Today I want to talk about a technique that I use to improve my arrangements and learn from other people's arrangements. I'm first going to walk through some cases where I've used it in the past, and then I'm going to demo the technique using one of my own songs to avoid any copyright implications. The basic idea of this technique is very simple. You get a song you like, especially one where you like the arrangement, of course. You import it into your DAW, match the BPM, and then you start mapping it out to get an overview when the parts come in, when they move out. First, I start by getting the basic structure of the song, so just using something like cue markers. Where are the choruses? Where are the parts? Are there even choruses? When do which instruments come in? When does the song completely change? I then map out all the different parts using empty MIDI clips I kind of color code. So what you can see here is the Amon Tobin song Phaedra, and I just created, whenever the bass line changes, a new MIDI clip here. These are for all the different instruments, and I start quite roughly with this, just when is there a bass playing, when isn't, and then I decide to focus in on certain parts of the song. For example, here I focused a bit more on the drum pattern. You can see I transcribed the drums, basically placed an empty MIDI clip whenever there's a kick playing, whenever there's a click playing. These are the violin parts, I color coded them when they're playing different motifs. And you can see quite nicely when the parts come in and out. If you're interested in the melodies, you can use some of these clips to transcribe the melodies or bass lines, but the idea is that you start very, very coarsely and then decide to prioritize what do you like about the song, what do you want to study. When doing this simple exercise, you might find some things that surprise you. Like, I often find that songs I like are actually a lot more simple than they sound. They're just mapped out very elegantly. So in this example, the bass line to me just sounds like a sample that's looped over and over again. You don't really notice it when listening to the song, but I highly suspect that these are just audio clips that are placed in the arrangement, and this way you can kind of get an insight for maybe how the song was made. Also, these violins, they also sound like they're just resampled. Likewise for the guitars here. And these bass fills, you can notice these higher bass notes only really come in when other parts aren't playing. And there are these B sections that have certain elements that never appear in the rest of the song. This way, despite it being quite a simple arrangement and actually quite structured and logical, the song can end up sounding really complex, and ways to create this kind of, I don't want to call it fake, but this feeling of movement and complexity are something that you're gonna learn from just mapping out songs you like and understanding how they create the feelings in you that they do create. Here's another example, a Hiatus Kaiyote song, Red Room. So as you can see, I first just mapped out the parts, the keys, the piano, the drums. I first just mapped out when are there drums playing, and then later I decided I want to transcribe the drum groove here. And I was really surprised by how simple it was. It was just kick, snare, but because it starts off with these more interesting fills here, it kind of contextualizes the drum groove in a way that makes it feel a lot more complex. Also, you can see quite nicely how motifs are repeating. I've written down the vocal phrases here. This is the main hook phrase. And then you can see how it develops, how the verses grow, how this hook repeats. Later on, there are parts when piano, keys, guitar are all playing to create a kind of peak of excitement, and later it tapers out again. You then start noticing certain patterns, like how songs structure sections, what the music you like does to make you understand all the information that's there. And you can use these patterns in your own music. You can even just import these MIDI clips and kind of arrange your own loops following the patterns of a song you like. So here I've got Schleppy, the Roger Wilco remix of a Mr. Bill and AU5 song, once again a very different genre. But you can do this for just as well. I've got the basses here. This is the drum pattern, which is quite interesting. It changes actually more than I expected in this case. I also use sometimes clips to map out filters. Here I mapped out the opening low pass filter because In electronic music, often filter movements are quite important parts of the composition. Again, a filter movement. I've got the kicks here, the snares here. I didn't really go into too much depth on the percussion because I didn't feel like it was necessary. I also didn't transcribe something. I could have also, if I wanted to dive into more depth for this song, I would have probably not transcribed the melody, but maybe try to recreate the bass patch in one of these clips. I didn't do this here though. What I did do though is map out all the vocal samples, when they repeat, when the samples change, and here how the outro works. I've got this fill, there's a vocal sample that makes room for the bass, and then there's some bright ambience that comes in at the very end of the song, while this release bass in the intro doesn't really appear in the second heavier drop section. And yet again, a very different genre of a song I really like. K-pop. K-pop is really good for studying arrangements because it's produced really well and the arrangements are very varied but very thought out. In this case, it's quite a minimal arrangement, but it sounds very elegant and it retains the attention very effectively. So I've got this bass line that's just looping all the way. By the way, this is Cool With You by NewJeans. You may or may not have heard the song, I recommend it. The piano chords, they'll play all the way through, and then we've got certain things that come in. Here I felt the need to map out the patterns, because some of the song is a more garagey drum pattern, and then it changes to house for a bit. Here again, I've mapped out a high pass. I've got these garage hi-hats here, and then these vocals with the backing vocals. These are verse vocals. This is the Cool With You hook. Then there's some call and response in the vocals here. Here's some pumping that comes in for certain sections, especially the house sections, where there's heavy side chaining that becomes a kind of compositional element. And there's some vocal in the outro here that sounds quite different to the rest of the song. Now, of course, you don't really want me to tell you how my favorite songs work. You want to apply this to your own favorite music so you can learn to write music in the way that you enjoy listening to it. So I'm gonna demo this technique using one of my songs because I have the copyright for this, so YouTube won't get me into trouble. And I'm gonna try to match the BPM here first. I might just try to use the automatic BPM matching in my DAW. Apply tempo curve to arranger. This seems to think it's 59 BPM, and stuff is pretty on beat. Because it's warped. Of course I want to set to raw. Is it gonna sound fine? Yeah, this is gonna do for now. So first of all, we want to map out some very basic stuff. Gonna create a group and then go into that group and maybe like map out where do the drums start. So there are some filtered drums here. Okay, the drums start here. So I'm gonna map them out here. I know that the drums, they play through the entire song. Then there's this motif, this guitar motif, that's very important. I'm gonna call this guitar and maybe color these red because I know this is the hook motif. Then I think this repeats twice. It's been a while since I've written this. Now this is the same guitar, but it's playing a solo of sorts. Now somewhere here, we get the hook motif again. So I'm gonna copy this over and a red clip here, and already I can see the basic structure of the song. So basically it's hook motif twice, then a long solo, and then the hook motif twice again. Quite simple. So what else do we have? Then I can sort of start deciding what do I want to focus on. Do I want to transcribe this guitar? Maybe I want to map out the sound effects here. I noticed there's some sparkle effect here. And I'm not gonna do this in depth, but I'm just gonna give you a basic outline. I noticed there's some counterpoint in the left speaker, so maybe I will want to map out that. Maybe I just want to transcribe the drums. Do they change at all? There's some effect here. And then maybe drums stop here. So yeah, I can use something like this as my basic structure and then decide where do I want to go into more depth. And if you apply this to a couple of songs you like, I think you'll be surprised how much you find. And you'll also be surprised by maybe where the actually complicated parts of the songs are, where maybe you're making things so difficult for yourself and where you need to focus on more to get a more interesting sound. So yeah, I hope this helps you improve your arrangement somewhat. See you.